right, everybody, we are back with Slick Mick's Body Slam review. And ladies and gentlemen, my guest at this time visited me a couple of times over at that TV station in St. Paul. Barb, what was the... Anyway, he is the former four-time world heavyweight champion. And Nick Bockwinkel, first of all, it's no secret to the fans at home who have followed professional wrestling that you and I have a little bit of a history together. What I want to talk about before we celebrate the anniversary of your first championship victory, you and I talked about a week ago about your last match here in the Twin Cities, August 1st of 1987, at the Minneapolis Auditorium. You were going to be wrestling Curt Hennig. And I had the privilege, it was my debut night, ladies and gentlemen, as the ring announcer for the AWA. I'd struggled for it for 20 years. I wanted to do this. And most of all, I wanted to introduce my favorite wrestler, Nick Bockwinkel. So here it is. It's August 1st of 87. And, Nick, I'll let you pick it up from there because you love this.
Oh, I did. I thought it was fabulous. If I wanted to pull a rib on you, it could not have been better. This was my last match that I was having in the United States. Mick had been the president of my fan club for, well, by that time, what, 17 years?
17 years.
Yeah. And this is the last match of the evening. Mick's got the tux on and the cameras are rolling. And he gets into the middle of the ring. I've gotten into the ring. Curt Hennig has gotten into the ring. And he steps out and he starts to speak. And the microphone is dead. The microphone has worked perfect all night long. The microphone is dead. He's banging it on his hand. He's looking at the button. He's doing this with the connection. And he's, you know, and he looks at me. And all I could do was smile because I thought it was hilarious. Here you had waited for 17 years for this moment. It came to you and whew, it was gone.
You know, I want to tell you something about that. You know,
I loved it.
I've investigated that real thoroughly, and I had some spies in the back, and they swear that they saw you with a wire cutter just prior to the main event.
Let me say, had it crossed my mind,
oh.
I'd have done it. I'd have done it. I'd have done it. I'd have had to have gotten you at that moment.
You got me plenty before that.
Yes, that's true.
We are here to celebrate, and I really couldn't believe it. I mean, 17 years ago, your first championship victory in the AWA, St. Paul Auditorium, against Vern Gagne, November 8th of 1975. Big Bad Bobby Duncombe was there at ringside. As I mentioned, Buddy Rose, the referee, a packed house. And it really wasn't an upset. It wasn't as if the sports writers considered it any major surprise that you had defeated Vern Gagne, but still the shockwaves were felt throughout the wrestling world.
Do you realize, and I'm not even sure since they evicted Vern Gagne out of the home that he has out of Minnetonka, I'm not sure. I mean, you have just generated some shockwaves because I realize this is public access TV and it's not like we're on WCCO or CBS or NBC, but somehow the word will get out that you have said these things about what has taken place. You could cause this man at his age to come out of retirement one more time.
Oh.
If he hasn't found Paragon Studios, he's going to come. He'll find him.
Is he going to come in here with another cardigan? Is he going to ruin another cardigan sweater?
It's possible. I mean, did he ruin one of yours before?
Well, he ruined his own. He used to, about every 6 or 8 months after his retirement.
Oh, I see.
Those juices started flowing again, and that Gagne temper, and boy, he was right in there. But 17 years, and Nick, over the past 17 years, you really, in my estimation, outside of perhaps a Ric Flair, maybe even these days, Bret Hart, the last of a particular breed of wrestling champions. Certainly the business has changed. It evolved. A lot had to do with Vince McMahon and the direction that the World Wrestling Federation took. How do you look at wrestling today as opposed to your first reign 17 years ago?
The entire tempo picked up. Just as we watch football today, and you see, and as well as in basketball, I mean, you see linemen, offensive linemen being able to use their hands. and you see the three-step layup, which would have been traveling in basketball going back a few years. And so a lot of that, it's this urgency, this instantness of our entire society, and that permeates. You would almost say that sports is kind of a reflection of the mental tempo of society, the way people are. And so in that respect, it's changed. But I think what happens is it goes through cycles. And I think right now, I mean, Bret Hart, Kurt Hennig, Ric Flair, these are phenomenal athletes, gentlemen who have my total and utmost respect and admiration as for their ability. And all of them, you know, a lot of people have said, oh, they're not as good as we used to be. If I may use the expression BS, they're as good or better, simply because they came in at a point where they saw the best of Nick Bockwinkel and Ray Stevens and Vern Gagne and Billy Robinson, and to them that was their starting point, where what we capped off our best with, they in their young minds, and of course they've taken a lot more chances, a lot more of them get hurt, and but I mean, as far as the best today and the best of yesterday will always be in their own class.
Well, along that lines, you know, you talk about wrestling style. I'd like to talk about interviewing style, because you were known for some eloquent and fantastic interviews. Do you see less of an emphasis on that today as far as a wrestler being able to talk? That's a very important aspect, and that's always has been. Do you see that emphasized more or less?
I think what happens is, there's no question, professional wrestling is probably the zenith of the macho business. Of the male gorilla beating on his chest. And too often, wrestlers have a tendency, as which a lot of people in the public eye, whether they're in show business or in sports, we've known a lot of the football players who have been very vociferous and really got a, if I may use the word from my interview days, an antinomian type attitude. And they and just want to do their thing. And needless to say, in the business of physically doing the whole macho shtick, most guys have a tendency, without realizing it, to start talking to other wrestlers. It's almost like the little argument that starts inside, and they go outside in the parking lot, and the tempo picks up, and guys start talking and braggadociously verbalizing to each other before, so to speak, the things start flying. And that was a mistake. I think I didn't care. I mean, my contention was simply, I felt I was speaking secondly to the wrestlers, first to the fans. And so that my intention was to make a common sense conversation with the fan who was out there listening to me. And the wrestlers knew how I thought, and basically they were hearing everything I was saying anyway. So that was my philosophy and my attitude towards it.
Speaking of the fans, along that line, you spent a majority of your career not exactly courting the fans' favor, and in the last remaining years with the AWA, you found yourself a fan favorite. What did that?
That was a change. You know, I always thought I was a nice guy. You know, if in this country, to show you, you know, the little idiosyncrasies of the world as we know it. In this country, if I hit a guy on the ropes, if I had Jim Brunzell or Greg Gagne, and the referee says break, and I nailed him with one, oh, how dastardly, this cruel thing, this man, how unsportsmanlike. If you're in Japan and you don't do it, they're going to say, what's wrong with him? Because as far as they're concerned, you are being maximized, or you are maximizing your efficiency to get your shot in. And the match takes place, whether it's on the ropes, through the ropes, in the ropes, on the floor, off the floor, in the ring. It didn't matter. It's get the job done. And that was my pragmatic approach to the whole thing. And of course, Americans, and they're getting they're retwisting what they had their twisted sense of sportsmanlike conduct was to it all.
And you know, Nick, when you mentioned punching a man on the ropes, and back in those days, you didn't exactly gain the favor of the fans. At the same time, you've got the Crusher, you've got Mad Dog Vachon, that would bite and scratch, and they're cheered.
Your average, yes, I mean, that goes to show you the disparity of the rationality of the, quote, fans out there. Yeah, I mean, how does one explain all this?
You don't. When it comes to the wrestling business, a lot of things they're a little bit far removed from everyday life, and yet they're not at the same time.
And I think what it's showing is it's showing the uniqueness of the human animal and the human fan as to what they like and why they like something. You know, they're as strange a bunch out there as anybody would want to think is in here, so to speak.
Well, and certainly professional wrestling, I mean, those of us who love this sport love it for exactly what it is, the diversity, the uniqueness of it, and so forth.
My explanation is simply this. There is no walk of life that invites you in and says to you, if you have the physical credentials and ability and are in shape, please come in, be as off the wall, be as colorful, be as absurd, be as unique, be as individualistic as you would like. Go to it. And I mean, you don't get this at 3M and at Honeywell and Control Data. You just don't get that invitation. And consequently, it does. It creates some very unique individuals.
Nick, we're down to about 2 minutes. I have to touch on exactly what you're doing right now, aside from the professional wrestling world. Once again, you're out of the ring, and you're still a success. You're a heavyweight champion now in the insurance business. Tell us about that.
Still working on it. I mean, you're being kind. Financial services, which involves the insurance business and the retirement planning and the investing, and for both companies, corporations, and individuals, all the insurance areas as well as the financial areas. And of course, the hot button today is everybody wants to know, where's the best place to put their money for retirement, what's the best way to do it, and get the most for it. And I happen to be able to fortunately say that I was lucky enough to find what I consider championship team in the Laney Financial Group, which is probably the premier organization in this town.
Well, as I said, ladies and gentlemen, the man, a champion in one business and now a champion in another.
Hopefully so.
Oh, absolutely. Before we get going, Nick, we're down to about 30 seconds. As you look back on your illustrious career, 4-time heavyweight champion of the world, is there one highlight of all of it, the thousands of matches, that stands out?
Oh, yes. Houston, Texas, Terry Funk. It was the only night that the three champions were on the same card. And I wrestled him for 1 hour after I had already wrestled another wrestler for 20 minutes.
It was Jose Lothario.
Jose Lothario. That and you know, and I've had a lot of them. There've been a lot. Gagne's retirement match was a biggie because he was all the hype that went into it, and he was right up there, and regardless of his age at that time, to be in that scenario, I mean, you could just feel the electricity in the building. A lot of great matches with Billy Robinson. There were just so many of them.
Ladies and gentlemen, one of the great wrestlers of all time. It's always a pleasure to have him. I swear you took the wire cutter. Ladies and gentlemen, the great one, Nick Bockwinkel. We're coming right back.